If you asked me when I was in high school and college whether I would ever reread any of these books, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy because I never actually technically read them in the first place. But here we are. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie and we are talking through my classics TBR. This is not a timed TBR, not for a specific period. This is my lifetime classics TBR that hopefully more books will be added as we go and I figure out what I want to read. But this is what we're starting with. So I've broken up this list into like actual classics like 1800s and earlier, and then modern classics, which you know would be more 20th century. So I've organized the books from the earliest written book to the more newest released book. Everything I think fits below the 21st century, I believe. Though I do think some like early 21st century, like early 2000s books are considered modern classics now, but none of those are on my list at the moment. So I never actually thought I would be interested in classics as much as I am building this TBR for. So I think what changed my mind the most was Frankenstein and like the fact that I absolutely love Pride and Prejudice. And I just realized as an adult with more reading power and brain power to understand things, I can understand things better that were written in older English or even translated from ancient texts. So I thought I would give it a try because I really do love learning about other countries like through the lens of fiction. And so you'll see some translated, you'll see some ancient texts on here as well because that is very interesting to me. To be able to read ancient texts that have been translated over time into English. I think obviously it won't be the exact original, but you know, it's the best that we could get to. So I think that's really cool. And then I also have some books that were originally written in English. And so it's kind of a wide variety. A lot of these won't be a surprise because I did include a lot of them in my most recent book haul, so I won't spend too much time on those, and I won't really be giving summaries or synopses for these because they're pretty well known, I would say. And so I don't feel like I need to waste the time doing so. But there's some books that like are newer to my list that I want to remember what they're about, so I might look up their synopses really fast. So we're gonna start with the oldest book on my list, which is kind of insane how old it is. And it's not really a book, it's kind of a epic poem series. And that is Ramayana by, I think Valmiki is the original author, at least as far as I believe. This is like an ancient Indian text written originally in Sanskrit, I believe, in 500 to 100 BCE, so very old. And my first introduction into the story of Ramayana was through the movie A Little Princess, where she used to live and grow up in India, and she's recounting the Ramayana to her friends in like very, you know, children-like way and easy to comprehend. And so I think it'll be really interesting to actually read the full story and the epic, and it's just very interesting to me. So that's a newer addition to my list, but I really just generally want to dive more into like ancient texts, the ones that I can from like around the world. And so I thought that would be a good place to start. So that is number one. The next one that I think skips a big time period, we're into the 1300s now, in 1321, and that is Inferno by Dante Alighieri. I think I'm saying that right. If not, that's wrong, but this is a more recent purchase that I got in my book haul, so no surprise here. This is the second oldest book on my list, which is kind of surprising, but you know, it's hard to find texts like between BCE and like the 1300s. I feel like the 1300s is when things actually started like getting published in a way, you know? So This one is on my list. It is originally written in Italian, so I don't remember who the translator for this version is, so I can't tell you what that is, and I also don't know which version of the Ramayana I will be reading, so I can't tell you which translation I will be choosing, but the actual image of the book that I choose is not based on the actual version I will choose, so we'll see when I get there which translation I will choose, but that is Inferno and Ramayana. The next oldest book, this one doesn't have a really specific date, so I just put it in the 14th century, so the 1300s, and that is Three Kingdoms by Luo Guanzhong. This has been actually a priority for me recently because this is technically called The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but I think the translation that I will go with is the Moss Roberts version. I think it's like a 4-volume book because it's just a lot. I think it's like 3,000 pages to get through, but I think his is broken out into 4 different books, so makes it a little more digestible, but I'm very curious about the Three Kingdoms and that history. This is a fictional retelling of the Three Kingdoms based on the actual records of the Three Kingdoms. I forgot who that was written by, but like that was in like the 300s or something when the actual Three Kingdom period was. So I have a lot of like research to do. Well, actually reading the books will help understand like time periods and stuff, but it was based on the Three Kingdoms that were built in ancient China at the time, and you know, all the wars and politics and stuff that were going on at the time. So you know me, I love my Chinese historical dramas and I love reading about older ancient time periods, so I feel like I will have a lot of fun with this book. I'm expecting it to be a bit difficult. I'm hoping the translation is like accessible, but we will see how that goes. The next book on our timeline was written in 1667, so jumped about 300 years, and that is Paradise Lost by John Milton. This is our first English written book, so no translations here, though there are a lot of like notes, like footnotes for like for translation, so that like technically, like I guess it's like edited by William Kerrigan, John Broomrick, and Stephen M. Fallon, so to give you like more context because it is older English, so not like directly probably the text that John Milton wrote, which is fine with me. So that is the next one, and I believe this one will be a lot more like religious based and like based on Christianity, because it is about the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and leaving that, and so I'll be curious how I feel about it now as an adult, so we'll see. I'm curious. This is one I read in high school at the time. Well, barely read, but I'm curious to see what I feel about it now, and I don't really remember anything about it, so that's why I wanted to re-add it to my TBR list. The next book on our list, we jump into the 1800s. And this one was written in 1811, and that is Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. This is a high priority on my list. The next two are also Jane Austen, so I'll fly through those quickly. So first is Sense and Sensibility in 1811. Then we have Emma, which was written in 1815. And then the last book on my Jane Austen list for now is Persuasion, and that one was written in 1817, I believe. And so those are the 3 main Jane Austen books that I do want to get to, or I will prioritize at the moment. She has a few others, but they're like less high on my list, so we will see. And then we move on to Mary Shelley, my fave. As you know, I do want to read the 1818 text version of Frankenstein. This will not happen anytime soon because I literally just read the 3rd edition of Frankenstein, so don't hold your breath for this one. I will wait till I like really want to read that story again. And then another Mary Shelley is The Last Man. This one was written in 1826. And so these all of these are written in English from British authors, so no translations are here. Next Next, onto another translation, we have The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, and that was written in French originally and in 1846. So we're making our way up through the 1800s. I believe this is a big story about revenge. I know it's a thick book. I think it's over 1,000 pages, so a lot of these are just very long, especially the ancient texts. Like, those will just take me forever to get through. That's why it's more of a lifetime TBR. I just don't expect me to be able to finish this like in a couple years. So I am very curious about that because I've heard great things. And if people are raving about a book like a classic that is over 1,000 pages long, I feel like I should probably read it. Next, we move on to some African American like original classics written during the slavery period in America, which, as we know, was a very long period. But what I'm referring to is the like 1850s to like mid 1860s. And so the first one is The Bondwoman's Narrative by Hannah Crafts. This one is an interesting one. So technically this wasn't published until 2002 because it took a long time to compile everything she wrote into a narrative. But she did write like pieces of the story from like 1853 to 1861, I believe. So I'm very curious to see what this will be like. So this was written by Hannah Crafts, and she was a writer who escaped from slavery in North Carolina. And so this is kind of autobiographical, I assume, of her escape to the North. And so this was compiled by Henry Gates Jr. This is believed to be the first African American novel by a woman, and so I thought it would be really interesting to read it. And then along the same lines, another book by an African-American woman during slavery, written in 1859. And the original name of the book, I'm not going to say. I just don't know if I can, and also I don't really need to, but it's also considered Sketches from the Life of a Free Black, as another name, by Harriet E. Wilson. And this is about a mixed race girl whose white mother abandons her with this white family. And, you know, obviously things are awful, but also not always awful. And so it's a story of this young girl coming of age. And Harriet Wilson is, I think, traditionally considered the first female African-American novelist, and also the first, I think, of any gender to publish an actual book in America, or on the North American continent even. So really cool, and you know, I want to read her story. And I don't think it's like autobiographical, more so like The Bondwoman's Narrative. I think it is fiction, but like based on life events that she's probably experienced. So we'll see. Next, we move down to Brazil for my first Brazilian classic, and this is The Posthumous Memoirs of Brás Cubas by Machado de Assis. And hopefully I'm saying that right. And this was published in 1881. And this, I believe, is a weird story, and that's why it's more a recent addition to my list. So I'm gonna read you the synopsis because that's what intrigued me the most about it, because I had barely heard of this before. I just typed synopsis into Goodreads instead of the title of the book. That's where my brain's at right now. The Posthumous Memoirs of Brás Cubas is written as an autobiography, a chronicle of the erotic misadventures of its narrator, Brás Cubas, who happens to be dead. In pursuit of love and progeny, Cubas rejects the women who want him and aspires to the ones who reject him. In the end, he dies unloved and without heirs, yet he somehow manages to turn this bitter pill into a victory of sorts. What makes memoirs stand up 100 years after the book was written is Machado's biting humor, brilliant prose, and profound understanding of all the vagaries of human behavior. Sounds fun, honestly. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but it does sound like an interesting premise. So I've recently added that one to my list. And then a couple more on the classics list. Next we have is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This was originally published in 1897. so getting to the end of the 1800s. Bram Stoker is an Irish author, so I believe it is written in English. And so obviously everyone knows the story of Dracula, so I'm not going to say any more there. And then my last classic, which technically this might be considered modern classic because it was written in 1908, so I'm counting it as an original classic, and that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This one, she's Canadian. I thought she was American, but she's Canadian, so that I didn't realize. But I'm very curious. This is, I believe, like more of a YA book. I actually like never really grew up like reading Anne of Green Gables or watching any of the shows or anything, so I have no idea of what I'm really getting into, but I've heard really great things and that it's a great story and it's fun, and I know it's a series. I believe also there's other books, so we'll see if I like it enough to continue. But that is the end of the the older classics list, and then we're going to move into modern classics. This list is a lot shorter, starting with the oldest on that list, that was written in 1927 and is one of two translations on this list, and that is Night on the Galactic Railroad by Kenji Miyazawa. This is originally written in Japanese. This is also more of like a children's YA book. And I don't really know what I'm getting into. It kind of felt like the Polar Express a little bit, with the vibes, but I feel like it's also heavy on the magical realism, which is what I really like, and so I added that one to my list. And then the next book that was written in 1937 is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, which I've talked about before. So this one I also technically read in high school, but also didn't read, so I'm gonna reread it and see how I feel about it. And then another one I read in high school that I don't remember and want to reread is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and that was written in 1958. And I believe it's also a trilogy, which I never got to the end, but I don't know. I'm committing to the first book only as of now. And then next we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This was written in 1963. I've heard mixed things about this, but I'm very curious to read a book kind of from that perspective of someone going insane. I heard it's kind of like The Yellow Wallpaper, but also not, so we'll see. I want to make my own opinion on it. And then next, the second and last translation on this list is The Master and the Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. And this was originally written in Russian and published in 1967. I honestly don't know much about this book, but I've heard people rave about it, so I added it to my list. I'll leave it at that. And then lastly, I also showed this in my book haul, and this is kind of the most modern book. This was written and published in 1996, and it is my only nonfiction on this list, I believe. And that is, well, I guess The Bondwoman's Narrative is technically nonfiction, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. And that is Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. This is about the story of a man who goes out into the wilderness. So I did actually read this and actually read it and remember it and liked it, and it's been so long that I want to read it again because I remember it having a big impact on me. So this is the end, the roundup of my classics TBR as of now. Keep in mind this will grow and probably change as I start to read them, but I think the book that I will be most likely reading soon is Emma, because it's on my summer TBR. So I'll keep you posted as I get through them, and maybe I'll do like a classics reading vlog or something. If there is anyone you want to see me read or do a reading vlog on, please let me know, or like let me know if I'm missing some really pretty great ones on this list. I am so open, like it can be from any country, any place, any translation. Like I want to read more, and so please give me your recommendations. And if you think any of these are like not worth my time, also please let me know. So I'll keep you posted, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.